Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Hall. I'm a developer evangelist at ARM, and we are the sponsors for the hardware and IoT track here at All Things Open today. I do have a little table in the back where I've got some boards I'm showing off, but I also have my own talk here immediately after this one. So if you're interested in learning about the past, present, and future of ARM, I encourage you to stick around for that. But for now, I will hand it off to Jeff to talk about home automation on old computers. Sorry, Ricardo.
Yeah,
I just
that's all
called
right.
you Jeff.
That's all right. My first two slides are introducing myself, so they quickly realize I'm not Jeff. Jeff, I'm sure will do a great job, though. My name is Ricardo Fearing. I'm really excited to be here and share with all of you a DIY project that I did in my home and share the steps I took that I think a lot of you will be able to take away and at least in part do in your home. I started this project because I had a MacBook in my closet collecting dust, and I began to wonder what I can do with it. Us working in technology, a lot of us have computers that we've acquired over the years, tablets, phones, and they're actually probably for a lot of us sitting in our closets in our junk drawer, or even worse, sitting in a landfill, going to waste. Quick detail, when I've gone through this talk in the past, it's been about 30 minutes. We have 45 minutes. I'm okay with questions along the way, and there is some time at the end for questions if you have them. Don't feel shy to ask. Join me as we turn some dusty relics, some of our old friends, into invaluable assets for our home. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a software engineer at GitHub. I'm on our marketing services platform team. We do have a booth here. It's pretty much about as much on the opposite side of the building as possible, but same floor. Come say hi, we don't bite. And we have lots of stickers. I'm a dad, both of previous foster kids and a little lady expecting in December, which I'm very excited about. And fair warning, even before I was a foster dad, before I was a biological father, I love dad jokes, and they are in this, so feel free to groan out loud. I practice jujitsu, so when I'm not at my home office, it's a way to stay in shape. And unlike some of the other martial arts, no one's punching me. This is my first conference talk, so I'm really excited and really nervous. And very thankful for that. You all are beautiful and wonderful and kind. While I am a software engineer, I'm not an IT guy necessarily, depending on who you ask. Grandma, yes. You all maybe no. I label myself as IT adjacent. So this is particularly helpful if that's kind of you as well. I really enjoy DIY home hacks. They don't have to be digital. They could be analog too, but they're fun. I'm proud to be half Puerto Rican, and I'm trying to improve my Spanish. So if you want to practice with me at any point during this beautiful conference, just let me know. So today my goal is to share a simple, easy to use tech stack that I believe will improve your home automation setup. It will allow you to unify your smart devices into one central hub, and we'll use Home Assistant for this. We'll provide extra security, we'll speed up our network, and by blocking ads and unsafe content, and we'll do that using AdGuard Home. We're going to simplify the process along the way using a tool called CasaOS, and we're going to be able to go into our system no matter where we are with a tunnel system using Tailscale. They are also here, and they are very kind, and they're in between. Some are here, and their booth is in between the ballroom. They don't bite either, as far as I know. And we're going to do this all without buying any additional hardware. So now the what, the why. I've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but why should you care? Why not buy into the Apple ecosystem, the Google ecosystem? As I mentioned before, we're contributing to waste. And our perfectly good devices are just taking up space in our closet or our junk drawer. The software we'll be using is often more powerful, has a lot more potential than the proprietary off-the-shelf counterparts most of the time. And we'll be saving money by not buying another device. We don't have to buy a new Raspberry Pi if we have an old device. And then when that no-name smart plug goes on sale, you can buy it because you know it will work with your system. So the first step, installing a modern OS, assumes this isn't a fresh out of the box, but something that has been sitting around. We do this for stability, reliability, compatibility with the software, improved performance, and if it's a modern OS, we get continued support. One of the software that I'll be talking about, CasaOS, requires the underlying distribution OS to be Linux-based, and I would argue that's the best way to go to bring a modern OS into your system. And so this is a really high strokes overview. I consider this a choose your own adventure book, and I'm telling you the adventure I took, and maybe you'll reject some, take some, get ideas, and that's kind of what I'm hoping here, but your mileage may vary on some of these suggestions. The things you'll need, old computer or a Raspberry Pi, something of the sort, a USB drive, I would say at least 8 gigs of space. So it'd be a lot easier if you have a new computer, if you have your day-to-day workhorse with you. It makes it selling a little easier, but also quick note that it can be safer if you don't have one and you buy something off Craigslist, off Facebook Marketplace. We don't have to connect it to the internet until it's been wiped, which is safer than instantly connecting it to your network. So the first 3 steps are the steps I say are easier on your new machine. The first thing we'll need to download is a utility tool to flash the operating system onto a USB drive, that second part. And the tool I suggest is Belina Etcher. I also forgot to mention, at the end I'll have a QR code and link that will have the slides and an accompanying blog post, because some of the things would be terribly boring to go through in a talk format. So next thing we need to do is we extract an entire OS onto a single file called a .iso file. Many of you will be familiar with this, but the 2 most popular Linux distributions that, from what I have found, are Ubuntu and Debian, and those are also the 2 Linux distributions that are recommended by CasaOS. So here's a note of which one you'll want to choose. Ubuntu, in my experience, is a little more user-friendly, but it only supports 64-bit CPU. Debian still supports 32 as a modern, up-to-date, still being released OS. So if your computer is a bit older and is only 32 bits, go with Debian. And I do have in that blog post instructions on what commands to run to figure out which you have. Okay, so now we utilize that first software, the Belina Etcher. So we take the .iso file that has our operating system, and we point to the USB drive in our machine, and we just select it, select the .iso file, select the USB drive, and then run Belina Etcher, and it essentially takes that .iso file and turns it into a format that our computers are going to be able to recognize as I can boot up from this. I can point my root to this. So if this is successful, we have a bootable USB drive. And I want to guide you through, again, broad strokes, process of accessing boot mode on your target device. So the devices that I've found in purchasing things off Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, the two boot systems, there are others, but are BIOS, Basic Input Output System, or UEFI, Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. No need to remember that, but there are others, but both of these are the boot menus that will work with what I'm describing. When you restart your computer, there will be a key prompt of some sort. Press F2 to enter setup mode, and then you press it quickly. One thing to note, if you don't press it quickly enough, it'll just go to its default, but now you know the key, so next time around you can hit it a little faster. So we're in boot mode. We select that USB and we move it up to the top of the list. Hey, computer, this is where I want you to point root. We save and exit. And when we save and exit, it reboots one more time, but it reboots pointing to our new location. Both Debian and Ubuntu are going to run you through some basic setups, language, time zone. This is the point we're linking up to our Wi-Fi or Ethernet, depending. And once you've completed these steps, congratulations. You've successfully installed a modern operating system on our variably old machine. Some extra tips, because we want this to be our home hub. I disable sleep. I want it to be on all the time. There's some startup applications that you won't need that you can go through and disable those. You can set up automated updates, but I suggest not to do that because that's our home hub. I suggest setting some sort of calendar event that Mondays I check for an update when no one else is online. We don't want our internet to go down, and when it does go down, we want to know exactly at this point when it is, so I don't interrupt my wife's Grey's Anatomy and happy wife, happy life. And then power management, and adjust power management because it's going to be on all the time. Before proceeding to the next steps, it's really important now that our computer stay at the same location in our, not physical, you could move it around, but the same IP address in our home always. Typically, routers use DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, which essentially assigns an IP address to every machine that connects, but that can change over time. When it runs out, it reassigns a new one, but we want this to remain fixed. And there are two methods to do that. One is on your machine, called setting a static IP, and the second is on your router, and DHCP reservation. It says, this IP is reserved for this machine. And again, the accompanying blog post has links to more detailed blog posts that others have written that I found to be really helpful. So these are really broad strokes because it'd be boring to go into detail here, and probably not helpful. So for DHCP, going into your router, you go online, you put in the IP address that's usually on the back of your router. Look up your router, and it's really likely that instructions will be quite easy. There'll be something like DHCP settings, LAN settings. There will be a list of connected devices, and there should be an option to reserve IP for that device that happens every time. And that's what I did in my home. And the other option is to go into the machine, running in your terminal, opening your terminal, noting information about your current IP, whether it be Ethernet, Wi-Fi, the IP address, editing your network configurations on the machine, and restarting to apply. If you've ever set static IP, you know that this is a gross oversimplification, but again, I don't think it'd be helpful to sit through detailed things that may not be the same for you. So, hence, again, blog post. So now that our machine is set up with Linux, I want to install CasaOS, which will really allow us to have the rest of the machines, the rest of the applications be installed quite easily, and helps us maintain, update our applications and our software. To avoid confusion, CasaOS is not an operating system, despite its name. It's a clever name that is confusing. It is super useful. I like it, but it is not an operating system. At a high level, it's an open source, user-friendly interface to manage Docker applications. It's built on the Docker ecosystem. As I mentioned before, CasaOS requires the underlying system to be Linux. Itself is a Docker application which controls other Docker applications. Docker, just if you're not familiar, is a really lightweight, isolated environment. It packages applications and all their dependencies into what they call containers. And this can be run on Linux, Mac, Windows. And it comes with a number of pre-configured apps and provides a really pretty UI. Installing really couldn't be simpler. Their website has the first like hero image is a terminal that gives you a script to run, and once the script is run, you will get an IP for your local machine to create a local login. You're not creating an account for CasaOS proper, but CasaOS in your network. As I mentioned, there's an app store, and this has a bunch of pre-configured apps that are more or less one or a few clicks install. It also allows for other, really any Dockerized system to be installed through its custom containers. And it makes it really easy to see when things need to be updated and to update them. It gives you information about your underlying system, the health of your machine, and it's super helpful. So real quick, we'll go through what it's like to install an app. Does anyone know what Plex is? So it's not really important to this, but it's you serve a NAS server that you can host your completely 100% legal movies, but that's not important. You go to the App Store, search for Plex, we find Plex, install it, and it begins to install. We can have it go click run in the background, and then after a short while, we have Plex installed via Docker on our system. We can log in and create or log into our account, and it's as simple as that. Now, I mentioned before it has a long list of pre-configured apps, but it doesn't have everything. And installing a custom Docker app is pretty straightforward if you've installed a Docker application before. There's a custom button top left, top right, top right, and it gives you fields that in any Docker documentation will have the fields you need, and it just gives it a nice UI. Other than the UI, the updating, you can also use the terminal, but if you wanted to just use Docker, but I digress. So now I want to talk about the project, the main crux of this setup that got started with me, and that's Home Assistant. It's an open source automation platform. You control your various devices, your services on your home. Again, this is really broad strokes. I hope you walk away excited to try out Home Assistant, because what I'm going to show you is the beginning. It's really it just scratches the surface. So, and my introduction into Home Assistant was, like many of us, having to change maybe a guest room, in my case, into a office. This was 2020, and as I mentioned before, I like DIY. I'm cheap. I mean, I like to save money, and so I used a light that I had already had and a smart plug that I already had above my desk to create a desk light. And I'm tall, but I couldn't really easily reach it. So I was like, all right, that was what prompted me for the smart outlet. Turn it to Google Home, but not only am I a DIY person, I'm really clumsy, forgetful, and so I'll leave my phone wherever, and I realized there's no Google Home app for Mac, and Apple Home does not like anything that's cheaper than $100, so this outlet didn't work, and I had already begun adding smart devices in my home, smart outlets, bulbs, security cameras, thermostats, a robot vacuum. Yes. I had expected all those devices to kind of work together like a family. I wanted to be the ruler of my smart house, but I was hoping, like I said, the robots would work like a family, but sadly they worked like a clique. Apple was the biggest offender, but if you can't tell, I have Apple products. And I did not want to have multiple apps for every single thing that I had already bought. But this is where Home Assistant really shines. So first off, the UI. You can make it your own. This is not mine. This is actually a template that the URL will be in my slides at the end. And it effectively bridges all your smart devices and eliminating the need to wonder, is this compatible? Eliminating, or at least minimizing the need, is this compatible with my current ecosystem? This interface is web, Mac, Linux, Windows, iOS, Android. And with Android and iOS, a lot of people, this is again not mine, but I'd love to do this, they set up old tablets, and now that's little wall panels for next to your thermostat. You can control all sorts of things. People put it next to their bed. So some of the integrations are not limited to, but include Apple Home, Roomba vacuums, Google Nest thermostats, Philips Hue bulbs, Google Home Assistant. So it takes a little bit of extra setup, but you can call Home Assistant to call your Google Home to call your Home Assistant integrations. It's a separate setup, but it's possible. Alexa, the National Weather Service, Samsung SmartThings, Husqvarna robot mowers, which robot mowers are awesome. Sonos speakers, and again, the list can go on. This is just a really small list of what can happen, or the applications available. With CasaOS, I won't go over again. You install with a single click, but I want to take a short detour from CasaOS and installing it, and just kind of point out let it know that installing through CasaOS means we're installing it through a container. There is another option called Home Assistant OS, which, unlike CasaOS, actually is an operating system. If at the end of this talk, the only thing you want to really invest in is Home Assistant, this is a good option. If you don't want to install Linux, this is a good option. Maybe you have two devices, old devices, and one of them you want to install Home Assistant OS, that's a good option. But the key benefit of CasaOS and Docker is that I can restart just bits and pieces of my home setup rather than having to restart everything if one thing goes down. And taking a step back from CasaOS, if you like the idea of only restarting certain things, but you want to stay in the terminal, everything I mentioned is true. It's a Docker container. You can use spin up Docker in the terminal just as easily. But no matter the configuration, some things I suggest are to set up zones. You put in your latitude and longitude, which you can find online, based on your address, a radius, whatever a block is, however you would like it to be, and you can set up as many zones as you want. Your work, your home. And so one of the things that I did, which wasn't possible with Google Home, is multiple conditionals. I know that multiple if statements. So I wanted when my wife, she's a nurse, and so some 12-hour shifts, sometimes it's late, sometimes it's or dark, sometimes it's light, depending on the time of year. Google Home will let me say, turn on the light at dawn, or turn on the light when Kristen gets home. But it didn't let me say, turn on the light when Kristen gets home if it's dark. Home Assistant doesn't care how many conditionals you have. Turn on the light when Kristen's home and gets home and it's dark and the cat is hungry. You know what? Maybe not, but I have heard Google Home has added scripts like this, but I can't speak to much about it. But it's there. It may have changed. Enable advanced mode. This is kind of like if you have an Android setting, developer options. It kind of opens up all your options. Enable two-factor authentication for security. We don't want our home system being hacked. Install Hacks, which is Home Assistant Community Store. You gain access to a really huge selection of open source add-ons that aren't officially supported by default in Home Assistant. It kind of serves as a gateway into all of the user-contributed extensions. So, unlike before when we looked, well, that was CasaOS, sorry. If we look for Husqvarna, there is not an official on Home Assistant integration, but in this Hacks add-on, we search for the same, and it will point us to the open source contributors repo where we can install onto our Home Assistant. Now I want to show you the next step to the Home Hub, and that's eliminating ads. Everyone hates ads. There are a plethora of tools out there to improve your browsing experience. I use them myself, but they all are either browser-based or device-based. So one thing you can do, or one thing that I like to do is when I'm home, I have the same one central way to control them, and that's through AdGuard. I prefer blocking everything with what is called a DNS sinkhole. There are two main DNS sinkholes, AdGuard and Pi-hole. They're both really great. The slight advantage over that I chose AdGuard at the moment was parental controls and a technically lower resource footprint, which isn't super enticing, but it was there. And there are some advantages to Pi-hole too. I invite you to look into it yourself, but both are really great options. And I want to give you a little visualization for what a DNS sinkhole is. Out of curiosity, who does know what a DNS sinkhole is? Okay, so this visualization may help you remember, because a DNS sinkhole is where certain traffic gets stuck. So it's actually a downstream DNS server. So essentially a DNS server, this is not the best analogy, but it's a phone book for the internet. If we type in github.com, our machine, our DNS server, downstream DNS server, will point to a cloud-based DNS server which knows what IP to go to for github.com. And it'll send the information and the payload that we want back to us. But we can feed AdGuard and Pile lists of things we don't want information back from. This is made up at ads.web.com. It sees that that's the root. It sends back a successful, if this means anything to you, it's successful 200 response with nothing. Again, we install with CasaOS. One thing I learned, I want to make aware of, and again, pointing to the blog at the end, if it's something you're interested in, is the port 53 is required for us to point our router to this, and there's some steps you have to take to free that up. This is, again, is one of the times where we're creating an account on our machine, not in the cloud. This is a local instance. And in order to start blocking ads, we remember earlier, either DHCP reservation or static IP, that IP that we no longer have our internet service providers DNS, we point to ours. Some tweaks, if you'd like, you can add parental control, safe search, if you have kids or if it's helpful for yourself. And while the default DNS upstream server that AdGuard gives you is great, you can add more for redundancy. If it goes down, we have redundancy so our internet doesn't go down. So AdGuard comes with block lists out the gate. These are lists of essentially regular expressions that say, if it matches this, I don't want you to go out and search for it, just give me nothingness. And who wouldn't want to add more to this? Block more ads, right? And this is a point where I've made a note. Sometimes you'll be so excited to do this, but sometimes something in your home will be strange. For me, it was Hulu. I had a setting on AdGuard that Hulu wasn't working on our Fire Stick. AdGuard gives you a single click disable these filters for 10 minutes, for an hour, whatever it may be, and that's super helpful to diagnose. So something to keep in the back of your head. If you do this and you run into an issue, you can just disable those filters for a little bit. You can deal with that for the 10 minutes, right? You can set up clients for each of your devices based on IP address, MAC address, client ID. So if Susie is allowed to watch YouTube, but Johnny's not quite old enough, and they both have tablets, one can be allowed, the other can be denied YouTube. And you can set up DNS entries. So if you want to always have your my cool home settings.local point to AdGuard or CasaOS, you can do that, and you can set that up here. So here's what it will look like. I don't remember what page this was. I don't remember what this page was, but you can see, oops, I'm sorry, y'all. Oh no. Oh no. Close your eyes. This is where an ad was supposed to be, but we have nothingness there. And this is something maybe we wanted to read about NFL traditionalists. And that's a good news, because not having to deal with ads means smaller payloads and quicker internet. And due to us eliminating sites that are known malware, it means a safer internet. So the final app in our configuration is just crazy easy. They advertise themselves as a zero configuration VPN, and again, remember they're here, and we'll have way more details than I can have. And don't bite is Tailscale. Tailscale really simplifies connectivity. So if you download it on each device that you want to connect into your VPN. This isn't a VPN like I want to watch Netflix shows in Canada, but it's private to you, to your devices. So if I install it on my iPhone, my home setup in my MacBook, they can connect to each other via these IP addresses given to me by Tailscale. And again, similar to CasaOS, how we install this is a single line in our terminal. It gives us a URL to link. We're logging in, creating an account in their service because each of our devices needs to know. We need to confirm that yes, can be on our VPN. So this is not creating a local account. This is creating a cloud account, as it should. So this means when we're on vacation, we have opportunity to check our home thermostat, our webcams, turn on and off lights, feed the cat with automatic feeder, and it's really that simple. I really couldn't. I don't know that I could ever create something quite as simple as Tailscale has made this VPN. So I'm coming to the conclusion where I say you use Home Assistant to unify your home's smart devices. Use AdGuard to block and create a safer browser experience for you and your family. Use CasaOS to make managing your software easy. Use Tailscale to connect remotely. And save money by using an old computer and that you can breathe life back into using Linux OS. Here is the blog post. In the blog post, there's a link to the slides. And feel you can contact me through, it's a GitHub repo there. And do I have any questions? So thank you. I'm going to clean up here and I'll talk to you. Thank you.